أشرف المرسلين محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم يا معلم آدم علمنا ويا مفهم سليمان فهمنا ويا مؤتي لقمان الحكمة آتنا الحكمة وفصل الخطاب. اللهم نسألك علما نافعا وعملا متقبلا. اللهم زدنا علما يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. قولوا آمين. نحن ندعو لكم فعليكم أن تقولوا آمين. We make a dua for you guys. You have to say Ameen. Or you guys don't know the dua. You guys don't understand dua difference from Adhkar or Quran? No, I'm just kidding. So, before we start, from the adab of sitting down together and remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to come closer and to sit closer to each other and to the person speaking, just so that it's some of the adab so that you can get more benefit if you're closer. If you're further, you might not hear certain things and you might miss some things. And again, as we do in every class, especially for this series, we try and remotivate ourselves of why we're doing this and what's the purpose that we sit together for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obviously we know and we hope that this is fully for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not for anyone else. But then we have to remotivate ourselves using the Quran and the Hadith of Prophet ﷺ. Right? Because if we just keep doing it, we're insane. إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي. The nafs and then the soul, it pushes you to do evil things and gives you evil thoughts in your mind. But when you remotivate yourself using the Quran, and you remotivate yourself in remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the tahmeed, the tahleel, and you continue to remotivate yourself, you'll find that this soul in of itself changes and now pushes you to do the right things and pushes you to do the proper things, as in turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and go on the straight path. Imagine your soul that is ammaratun bisu, that Allah called this, you can change it simply by constantly remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why we do gatherings like this. Every masjid is doing something like this. And we do it here at Bukhari as well, so that we can bring the youth together, so that we can sit together as youth and remind ourselves. It's not always going to be myself sitting here. It could be one of you guys of something you've learned, you sit together and you bring it out to each other so that you can benefit everyone else. You never know. You might tell someone something, a little advice. One little advice or one little lesson that you taught that person, they teach millions of people. And when you pass away, these millions teaching other millions is becoming an ajr for you constantly as a sadaqah jariyah and as a way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expiating and giving you more ajr while you're dead. You're dead, you can't do ibadah anymore. But you're getting this ajr because you did something here that benefited the people. And we're going to do one hadith before we start as a motivation, like I said. Prophet ﷺ, he says, لا يقعد قوم يذكرون الله عز وجل إلا حفتهم الملائكة وغشيتهم الرحمة ونزلت عليهم السكينة وَذَكَرَهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي مَنْ عِنْدَهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he's saying that when a group of people, group of believers come together in their remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a gathering like this, because they used to do it a lot, the Sahaba and the Salaf. You would go into the Masjid al-Nabawi, salawatullahi wa sallam alayhi, his masjid, and you would see people sitting in groups, all talking about different things, reminding themselves about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what happens with these groups? Who knows? What is Prophet ﷺ saying here in this hadith? Who knows? The angels surround them. So the Messenger of Allah is telling us, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that the angels surround them with their wings. And the mercy of Allah envelops them, meaning that it goes around them, it envelops them. And the sakina, meaning tranquility, it descends upon them from the heavens by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then, on top of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you're doing this for His sake, every single one of us, according to this hadith, every single one of us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying our names in the heavens right now. If this is truly for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is how it is, right? We hope. Idnillah ta'ala. So we will continue our series on Qisas al-Anbiya by Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah ta'ala. And 2 weeks ago, it's a very long time ago, so I think people forgot what we talked about. 2 weeks ago, we talked about and started the story of Adam and Hawa alayhi salam. And we talked about the creation of Adam alayhi salam. What happened prior to his creation, what happened to when he was created, and what happened after he was created. So we said that pre-creation, before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam alayhi salam, who do we have? The jinn on earth. How long? Who remembers how long were they on earth before the humans? We mentioned it 2 weeks ago. Who remembers? 500. Anyone else have any other ideas? So we said that the jinn were here 2,000 years before the human. We also said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before creating Adam alayhi salam, He told the angels of His creation. وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً وإذ قال ربك للملائكة إني خالق بشرا من صلصال من حمأ مسنون. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we see in the ayat that we said 2 weeks ago, He told and informed the angels of the creation of Adam alayhi salam, meaning that they knew about his creation prior to him being created. It wasn't just a surprise for them. We mentioned that after his creation, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put his ruh that He created for him into his body, we mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the angels that they have to do what? They have to sujood. وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ. We talked about that incident. The incident with Iblis and the angels prostrating to Adam alayhi salam. We also talked about the question that the angels asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He mentioned that He was creating Adam alayhi salam. Right? What did they say? Who knows what they said? Exactly, they said قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون. So they questioned Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we mentioned that Ibn Kathir gave us many dalil. He gave us many adillah and many proofs on why they asked. And that they did not ask to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nor did they ask to protest against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the things that we see is they wanted to see and understand this wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this reasoning that He decided to create this creation when they knew of a creation before this creation that was causing mischief on the land and causing mischief on earth, bloodshed and a lot of issues. And Ibn Kathir tells us, rahimahullah, in this book, that there were angels that were sent down to the earth, and they pushed away these jinn into distant lands. This is when they were causing this much issues. So they knew of these issues, and they said, قالوا أتجعل فيها, are you going to put on this earth من يفسد فيها, a creation that's going to cause corruption? We've already known of a creation before. But what I want to make clear is that they were not protesting against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Who knows why? لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us regarding the angels, They do not disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in anything that He tells them to do, whatever it is. وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ, and they do whatever they're told. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them. This is how He created them. They have no free will. The jinn and the humans, they have free will. We mentioned that 2 weeks ago. They have free will, and this is what made the humans one of the things that made them very unique was the fact that they have free will. Yet you have those that spend most of their time worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though that they have free will. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He told them, إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, I know what you do not know about this creation. But the angels, they have no free will. They don't have that capacity to turn against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or to turn their backs against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when they're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala this question, it's not in a way of, or a form of disobedience, or to question or protest against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does that make sense? So we mentioned that last week, or 2 weeks ago. We also mentioned the different opinions regarding the reasons why, the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Adam. So, فَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا ثُمَّ عَرَضَهُمْ عَلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ. So we said the different opinions of the scholars and the Sahaba and the Mufassirin on what are these things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Adam alayhi salam. Then we also mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Hawa after Adam alayhi salam. So from what we mentioned 2 weeks ago, I'm not sure if we mentioned it, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created Hawa while Adam alayhi salam was sleeping. So Adam alayhi salam, he was sleeping, and then he woke up and then he saw Hawa. And he created Hawa from what? We mentioned 2 weeks ago, from what? What did he create from? From the rib of Adam alayhi salam. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ, there's a hadith where he says that be good to your women. Be good to your women, because they were created from the rib. If you try to straighten the rib, it's not going to go good for you. It's not going to go well for you. And if you leave it alone, meaning that you let it go do what it wills, then it's going to stay crooked. So this means, A, don't abuse them. Don't abuse them. And B, also don't be someone who just looks a blind eye to everything. Then he finishes off again saying, be good to your women. And this is another proof, or the dalil that Ibn Kathir brings up, saying that she was created from the rib of Adam alayhi salam. So today what we're going to do is we're going to get into a few ahadith regarding the creation of Adam alayhi salam. Then we're going to get into Habil and Qabil, the story of the sons of Adam alayhi salam. So we see the first hadith that Ibn Kathir rahimahullah shows us is a hadith that was narrated by Imam Ahmed from Abu Musa, who said that the Prophet ﷺ, he says that Allah created Adam from a handful of soil. That Allah created Adam from a handful of soil. And this soil was soil that He gathered from over the earth. So this is why it says turab. يا أيها الناس إن كنتم في ريب من الخلق فإنا خلقناكم من تراب. This turab is turab that was on the earth, from the earth. Then the hadith continues saying that this is how the children of Adam came, according to the different colors and the different shapes that we have. Right? You have people who are lighter than others, people who are darker than others, people who are taller, people whose face shape is maybe wider or shorter, whatever it is. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them, using the soil or the earth. The Prophet ﷺ continues saying that there are white among them, as well as red and black and cross colors and different colors. So there are those among them who are of bad nature, meaning their akhlaq, their khuluq. It's of bad nature, and there are those who are of good nature, soft, and there are those who are harsh and strict, and then there are those who are in between. So Prophet ﷺ here is telling us that the form of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam, and he tells us because he created him in this form and in this using this turab, you see different forms of creation, both within and in outer appearance, internal and external. That's what Allah Prophet is telling us. So we have to remember that again, this is the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if I go now and I try to disrespect someone because of how they look, their color, whatever it is, I say, oh, this person's color is ugly or whatever it is, then I'm saying that the Khallaq, الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وما بينهما, that you're saying that now he is ugly because his creation is ugly, right? You're disrespecting the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which in turn you disrespect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you have to understand that this hadith specifically telling you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everyone differently. There's the white among them, there's the red among them, there's the cross colors, there's those who are of different shapes, different heights, whatever it is. You cannot now come and say this person is this and this, because when you do that, you're disrespecting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he created Adam from his own hand. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, in Surah Sad that we mentioned 2 weeks ago. He created him in a human form. And as an earthen body, meaning that as a body from earth for 40 years. So when the angels, they saw him, they were passing by. So this is before his ruh was in his body. He was still unconscious. There's no soul. But they see the body and how it looks. They used to become frightened because this is a whole new creation. Think about it. We were, from Adam, as humans, no other creations ever thought about us or seen us. So when they saw this new creation, all they knew about was the jinn and the malaika and any other creation Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. We know that Allah has other creations from Him. When He says in Surah Isra, وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِّمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. We don't know what this kathir is. It can be many things. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Khaliq. This is what He named Himself, meaning the one that's constantly creating. So there were many creations before us. So they know some of these creations, but they never saw this specific creation. And this is why they became frightened. However, Iblis was the most frightened amongst them. Why? Because he would pass by Adam alayhi salam, and the body would make a sound, like the sound of pottery and things like that. And it is Allah that we know in the Surah Rahman, Allah says, خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ صَلْصَالٍ كَالْفَجَّارِ. So He created man, meaning Adam alayhi salam, from clay, like the clay of pottery. So He created him from similar to the clay of pottery. So we have to realize that already Iblis in his mind, he's already thinking negative things. So whatever pushed him to this, like we said 2 weeks ago, is premeditated. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already knew of this premeditation. Allah already knew about this. Right? He already knew about this thing that Iblis was going to do, disobeying Him and turning away from Him. And then asking Him to live until the last day. All these things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew about. But Iblis had his thoughts premeditated. Then Iblis used to tell himself that there has to be something and a reason that this creation was made. There has to be a reason. And he would enter through his mouth and he would come out of his back. Right? He would enter through his mouth and he would come back out of his back. So this is him trying to kind of research, investigate. Even though it sounds messed up, this is kind of Iblis' way of investigating and understanding this creation. And then he would tell the angels, don't be frightened of this creation, because your Lord is solid, meaning that He's absolute and eternal. And this is hollow. So He's saying that this is nothing. Nothing for us to worry about. And He said that if I overpower him, I will destroy him. So again, goes back to the premeditation. This Iblis was already having crazy negative thoughts about this creation already. He already wanted to destroy this creation. So the moment that he was told to make sujood to this creation, that he said all these negative things about and had all these thoughts about, he was like, there's no way. No way I'm making sujood to this creation. And then after that, he says, I'm going to destroy this creation. As much of them as I can take to the hellfire, I'm going to take them. I'm going to take them with me. And I'll destroy them internally for eternity. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to breathe the soul into Adam alayhi salam, the soul that he created for him, he told them that when I breathe the soul into him, you make sujood and you prostrate before him. And we mentioned this last week. And then Anas bin Malik, he tells us that the Prophet ﷺ said that when Allah created Adam, he left him for a while. And this is upon Allah's wisdom. We don't know why. It's Allah's reasoning for leaving him for a while. And he left him for a certain amount of time, as long as he wanted him to be unconscious and before he breathed the soul into him. But Iblis would go around him every single day. And he would enter his body, he would investigate, he would stand and just stare at him, and he would poke him, he would think about things of this creation. And when he found him hollow, he knew that this was a creature who would not restrain himself. You guys understand what this means, right? When he's thinking that this is a creation who cannot restrain himself. So he's already thinking that this is going to be easy to take over. To do waswasa on this creation, he's like, it's going to be easy because they're so hollow. However, we know this is the reality nowadays. If you look around the world, you'll see that shaitan has almost taken over. Is that not true? Everything that's going around the world, you'll see that shaitan, he's making true to his promise. لأغوين قال فبما أغويتني لأزينن لهم في الأرض ولأغوينهم أجمعين. And then in Surah A'raf he says ثم لآتينهم من بين أيديهم ومن خلفهم وعن أيمانهم وعن شمائلهم ولا تجد أكثرهم شاكرين. He's going to do whatever possible means. And we mentioned last week or 2 weeks ago that even if you are someone who's a abid, who's a heavy worshipper, someone who's seeking the knowledge, someone who's very well worshipping of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's going to find a way, whether it's causing you to commit bid'ah, whether it's causing you to choose the smaller thing that has the smaller ajr than that has larger, and he makes it seem that this is better for you. Whatever he can to diminish your worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if you're someone who's well worshipping of Allah. And we said that this is a hadith from Anas bin Malik. Abu Hurraira also narrates another hadith regarding this topic from Prophet ﷺ, saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam and he was 60 cubits. I don't even know how tall, if you can imagine how tall that is. Right now we were just at a Bukhari basketball game. I think the tallest guy was like, what, 7'5"? 6'8"? He looked very tall. But the point is, this guy was the tallest in the gym. That's the truth, right? He was the tallest in the gym. Adam alayhi salam, now you guys that were there, think about it. How tall that guy is. Now Adam alayhi salam is 60 cubits tall. So this is when you say Subhanaka ma khalaqta hadha batila faqina adhab an-nar. When you hear of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the greatness of it, and you see the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the greatness of it, you have to remember and do adhkar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanaka ma khalaqta hadha batila. And going back to the hadith, he said to him, go and greet those angels and listen to what they greet you back with, because that will be your greeting. This will be your greeting once you greet them. And who knows the greeting that they said to him? Huh? Assalamu alaikum. They greeted him with Assalamu alaikum. So this is what the greeting that he was told, that this is the greeting you'll greet with. They greeted him back by saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So they added to what he said, wa rahmatullah. So everyone that enters paradise will enter it in Adam's image. And since that time, humans are being reduced. And this is a Sahih Hadith by Bukhari, meaning that once you're entering Jannah, you're going to be 60 cubits tall. And you're going to be in Adam's image. Meaning whatever, you'll have your own image obviously that Allah gave you, but you'll be 60 cubits tall. You'll be as big as Adam alayhi salam. And obviously you'll be able to do a lot more things than you can right now. And we know from the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created, once He created Adam alayhi salam, He took from his loins every ant, all his whole lineage, meaning every single human being that was to touch this earth. Every human being that was on this earth, every human being that is currently on this earth, and every human being that will be on this earth was on this gathering. وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ قَالُوا بَلَى شَهِدْنَا أَن تَقُولُوا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ إِنَّا كُنَّا عَنْ هَذَا غَافِلِينَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in this ayah that when your Lord brought forth from the loins, so from the back, the children of Adam alayhi salam, when He took the loins of Adam and brought us, and He made us bear witness to ourselves, am I not your Lord? And we said, yes indeed. And then imagine, on the day, Allah says that on the day of judgment, when we bring you forth this shahada that you made, this testimony that you made, you'll say, Inna kunna an hada ghafilin. We were truly unaware of this. So, the question here is, do you guys remember that? Who remembers that gathering? Maybe you remember, huh? However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the reason He's saying you can't have this excuse is because He's telling you right now in the Quran. He told you that this gathering happened. وَمَنْ أَصْدَقُ مِنَ اللَّهِ قِيلًا. Allah's telling you this happened, so you know it happened. You have an idea in your fitrah, because this ayah is telling you. Even if you look at a child, right? If you look at a child, there's like this very famous video of like a child that was, it was a Christian family, and they were talking obviously about Isa alayhi salam and the ways that they talk about him. And she didn't understand, and she was saying, how is it possible that God prays and God asks? Is there two gods? Like, how does it work? So the natural fitrah is that you know that there's only one creator. So you can't, it is then later that once you are in your environment and your parents and whoever you're with changes you into becoming whatever you are. Like we know even in science, nature and nurture, your environment changes you and builds you to whatever you become. So this ayah is telling you that you all made testimony. We all made testimony that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only Lord and the only God, and there are no gods besides Him. And then in a hadith similar to this ayah, Prophet ﷺ tells us that He created Adam and He stroked his back with His right hand and took out from it some of his progeny and said, I have created these for paradise, and they will be doing deeds of those who deserve paradise. Then He stroked his back once again, and He took the rest of his progeny and said, I have created these for hell, and they will be doing the deeds of those who deserve hell. One of the companions, he said, Ya Rasulullah, what is a deed for? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, when Allah creates a person for paradise, He facilitates for him to do the deeds of the people of paradise until the day he dies upon those deeds. And so Allah enters him into paradise because of those deeds. And when He creates a person for Jahannam or for hell, He facilitates for him to do the deeds of the people of hell until he dies on those deeds. And so Allah enters him in hell for those deeds. And this hadith was also recorded by At-Tirmidhi and Abu Dawud. So this hadith in summary is basically saying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already, it's kind of telling us about the qadr. We know the qadr already. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He wrote down everything that's going to happen. From the day before you're born, to the day you're born, and everything you do in between your life and to your death, every creation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already written that down, and He knows about it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has already written if this person is going to go to hell, or if this person is going to go to paradise. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us min ashab al-jannah. Because you never know. You can do as much good as you can, and then the last minute, you turn against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you die upon that state, and then you enter hellfire. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already knows, and He ordained the deeds this person is going to do. It's already predestinated for them. That doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused you to do the sins that you do. This is the claim that Iblis made. قَالَ فَبِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي. He blamed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes you to do these sins. It just means that this sin that you're going to do, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already ordained it and predestined it. Does that make sense? The difference, the distinction between the two. So, because of this hadith, obviously we see that Adam alayhi salam, he was already alive and present at that time. So Adam alayhi salam, he will be a witness against you or for you. Because he was there. He was there. So if you say that إِنَّا كُنَّا عَنْ هَذَا غَافِلِينَ, or this did not happen, then Adam alayhi salam is a witness against you. But if you know that this happened and you try your best to be connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you said and you testified that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your Lord, then He will be a witness for you. And Adam alayhi salam, he saw among the prophets bright lamps full of light, and all those prophets were made to take another special covenant about the prophetic missions. So we know the ayah of وَإِذَا أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ قَالُوا بَلَى شَهِدْنَا أَنْ تَقُولُوا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ إِنَّا كُنَّا عَنْ هَذَا غَافِلِينَ. This is the ayah mentioned earlier about everyone. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then did another gathering, and He took a special covenant from the prophets and the messengers alayhim salam. وَإِذْ أَخَذْنَا مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ مِيثَاقَهُمْ وَمِنْكَ وَمِنْ نُوحٍ وَإِبْرَاهِيمَ وَمُوسَى وَعِيسَى وإذا أخذنا من النبيين ميثاقهم ومنك ومن نوح وإبراهيم وموسى وعيسى بن مريم وأخذنا منهم ميثاقا غليظا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's showing in this ayah that He took another covenant from the messengers alayhim salam. So there's two covenants, and two that Adam alayhi salam is a witness for. The first being the general population and all humans that they testified that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Lord and is the God, the only God and the only Lord to be worshipped. Then He took another covenant from the prophets and the messengers that they're going to do their mission. So their mission is to warn the people and to send the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is La ilaha illallah. So He took this covenant from them, and they said that they will do this. Obviously, this is another witness against them. And we know the Prophet ﷺ, that they have done this mission. As we see in the Quran, as we see from the Seerah of Prophet ﷺ, they did this mission perfectly and as best as they can. Not everyone followed them. In fact, some of them had very little followers, but at least they did their job and they did the deed that they told Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they were going to perform. So, regarding Adam alayhi salam and Hawa, this is the hadiths and the ayat that we mentioned 2 weeks ago, as well as the story and how it played out before the creation, during the creation, and after the creation of Adam alayhi salam. With that, is there any questions regarding Adam alayhi salam? And before we move on to Habil and Qabil, is there any questions? Okay, so Habil and Qabil, yeah. So Adam alayhi salam, how long he was in Jannah? I don't believe it stated that. I'm not sure, but I can confirm for you. But he was. There is actually a debate on the Jannah that he was in. Was it Jannatul Ma'wa, which is the Jannah that's for eternity, the Jannah that, inshallah, we will all go to, or was it the Jannah on earth, a different Jannah? So there's two opinions of the scholars, alayhim salam. Or sorry, rahimahumullah jami'an. This is two opinions between the scholars. The majority opinion is that he was in Jannat al-Ma'wa, but the other scholars, they say that the reason he wasn't in Jannat al-Ma'wa, or it doesn't make sense, is because he slept, as we know. He slept and he woke up and he saw Hawa, right? As well, he was told not to eat from a certain tree. When you go into Jannah, you have whatever you can have. So it's kind of, this is their side of the argument, and the other side, they're saying because this is Allah told them to come down from Jannah. So what is this that they're coming down from? Right? Actually, another argument that the other side has is that Iblis shouldn't be able to go into Jannah and to dissuade them, because you're not going to have those inclinations when you go to Jannah, right? So this is two different sides, but the majority side is that he was in the Jannah al-Ma'wa, the Jannah that we know about. And then actually within the second argument, there's two different opinions there. So the two different opinions is where on earth would the Jannah be? There's two different opinions on that. That's as far as what we have regarding how long he was where he was in Jannah, or how long. But I'll try to find the actual time for you, inshallah. Is there any other questions? Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions the story of Habil and Qabil, but one time in Surah Ma'idah. And he mentions it pretty extensively and pretty well, but then the hadiths continue and give us more context. And you need to understand that the hadith Prophet ﷺ, when they're talking about the stories of the prophets and these ilm al-ghayb, these things that are unseen, these are things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet ﷺ. He didn't tell him obviously in the form of Quran, but he told him in a form that befits his manner. And he explained to him how these things happened. And this is why we have the hadith that we spoke about in Adam alayhi salam, and all the other prophets that we're going to talk about alayhi salam. This is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, تِلْكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الْغَيْبِ نُوحِيهَا إِلَيْكَ. These are the stories and the things of the unseen that we inspire to you. Right? So this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, and then he tells to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet doesn't just make it up and add on to the Quran and whatever. That needs to be understood. Why it's not in the Quran? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he willed it, and this is not something he added into the Quran, but he told his Prophet, and his Prophet ﷺ explained to us. Regarding Habil and Qabil, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, وَاتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ ابْنَيْ آدَمَ بِالْحَقِّ إِذْ قَرَّبَا قُرْبَانًا فَتُقُبِّلَ مِنْ أَحَدِهِمَا وَلَمْ يُتَقَبَّلْ مِنَ الْآخَرِ قَالَ لَأَقْتُلَنَّكَ قَالَ إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ لَئِن بَسَطتَ إِلَيَّ يَدَكَ لِتَقْتُلَنِي مَا أَنَا بِبَاسِطٍ يَدِيَ إِلَيْكَ لِأَقْتُلَكَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهَ رَبَّ الْعَالَمِينَ إِنِّي أُرِيدُ أَن تَبُوءَ بِإِثْمِي وَإِثْمِكَ فَتَكُونَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ النَّارِ وذلك جزاء الظالمين فطوعت له نفسه قتل أخيه فقتله فأصبح من الخاسرين فبعث الله غرابا يبحث في الأرض ليريه كيف يواري سوءة أخيه قال يا ويلتى أعجزت أن أكون مثل هذا الغراب فأواري سوءة أخي فأصبح من النادمين. So this is Habil and Qabil that Allah explained in the Quran. Obviously, we don't see their names here. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ ابْنَيْ آدَمَ, talking for us to tell us of the story and the issues and the things that happened with Ibn Adam, the two sons of Adam alayhi salam. And we know Habil and Qabil, why? No, there's more than two sons. But why do we know it's Habil and Qabil? And it's not Sheath, for example. How do we know that's Habil and Qabil? The hadith of Prophet ﷺ. That gives us more context. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and recite to them the story of the two sons of Adam alayhi salam. Adam and Hawa alayhi salam. When they each offered a sacrifice. So the two sons we're talking about Habil and Qabil. They were each offered a sacrifice and it was accepted from one of them, but the other it was not accepted from. And we're going to explain what the sacrifice was for. So the other one that I wasn't expected from, which is Qabil, he said, I'm going to kill you, to Habil, out of anger, because there's something that we're going to explain more what happened. But just to translate the ayahs that we just recited. But this is something that really angered him, the fact that he lost this, that he wasn't the one that was granted this. He said, I'm going to kill you. So the Habil, he said, Allah only accepts from those who are muttaqeen, who are pious, who are conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who have taqwa. But if you stretch out your hand against me to kill me, so if you attempt to kill me, I'm not going to try and fight back. I'm not going to try and kill you because I fear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to punish me. So I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, I would prefer that you bear the burden of my sin so that my sins come to you. Or this is what he's saying, that my sins come to you if you kill me on top of your sins so that you become an inhabitant of the hellfire. That is a recompense and a very disgusting place for the transgressors. So then, out of still, the shaitan is there, he's still there, angry. So all this that his brother told him, warning him indirectly from the hellfire, warning him of sins, and telling him that be conscious of Allah. Indirectly, all these things he's telling him, it didn't touch his soul, it didn't touch his heart. Instead, he was still angry. So then his soul prompted him to kill his brother. So he killed him. And he became one of the losers. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a raven searching the earth to show him how to bury the body of his brother. And he said, woe to me. So, Ya waylata a'ajaztu an akuna. Was I not even able to do this with the raven, what the raven has just done? Was I not able to think about this, basically? And so he buried his brother. Then he became full of remorse after doing what he just did. And this actually goes back to sinning. When you become extremely angry, Prophet ﷺ, he tells us that when you become angry, there was one time they were sitting together with Prophet ﷺ, and there was a man whose face was extremely red out of anger. He was extremely angry. So Prophet ﷺ, he said to the Sahaba, I know one thing that if he says, all this anger is going to go away. Which was أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Because it's a shaitan that entices you, and he triggers this anger, and then he entices you to become more angry. To the point where, and maybe if you ever gotten angry so much, you notice how you're kind of unconscious. It's kind of like a drunken state where you don't know what's happening, what you're doing. Then you make a decision. Whatever the decision is. If you go and flip a bunch of tables and you just destroy a bunch of places, or you do what Qabil did, and you actually go and do the action of qatl, go and kill someone out of anger. Then you wake up and then you realize, okay, what did I just do? This is why he's feeling remorse, because he was so angry and Shaitan was enticing him the whole time and getting him more and more and more angry. Then when he opened his eyes after he killed his brother and he saw that he just killed and murdered his brother and the blood is there, the body is there, there's no more soul in his brother, he just killed and murdered him, he realized what he just did. So we go back now to Adam alayhi salam. Adam and Hawa, they would have twins at different times. So as we said 2 weeks ago, she gave birth, Hawa alayhi salam, 20 times. And each time it would be 2 and 2 and 2. So Adam alayhi salam, he would marry the son from one of the birth to the daughter of the other birth. Does that make sense? So like 2 were born and then another 2 were born. So Adam would kind of do like an X. So one from marries the other one, and the other one from the other one marries the other one, so that everything is kind of organized. And obviously don't think anything messed up, because there's no other humans. There's no humans there. So they're not gonna go and how are they gonna that doesn't make sense, right? So doesn't mean now you make the argument, okay, I'm gonna go and marry off someone, you know. No. So this is just at the time. This is how it was. So in the case of Habil and Qabil, Habil, he wanted to marry the sister of Qabil. And Qabil was older than Habil. So Qabil was older, meaning he was of the first twins. The issue was that the twin that he was matched to wasn't as appealing to him, meaning she wasn't looking as nice to Qabil. However, the other twin, she was extremely beautiful. And Qabil, he was not matched with her by Adam alayhi salam. So he didn't want to do this. So Qabil, he went to keep his twin for himself. So Adam ordered Qabil to marry her with Habil, and he refused to do so. So then he ordered both of them to offer a sacrifice. So this is kind of a way to, this sacrifice was a way to destroy this issue with Qabil, like this issue of being protesting and being disrespectful and being very hard to work with. He said, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to offer a sacrifice. So the both of you are going to offer a sacrifice. And Adam alayhi salam, he went and he left for some time so that they could do their sacrifice. So Habil, he offered a fat lamb, meaning a lamb is like a young calf, I think, or a young sheep. I'm not a farmer, so I don't know how this stuff works. But it was a lamb. So he offered a fat lamb, and he was a shepherd. But Qabil, he offered a bundle of the worst crops that he had grown. So let's just kind of pause here and look at this. So Habil, he looked and said, okay, what can I give for the sacrifice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What can I give? And this shows you how he was, Habil. So he went and saw a fat lamb that he had as a shepherd, and he said, okay, I'm going to offer this to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Qabil, in his greediness, he said, I'm not going to go and offer this nice crop that I have, so Allah is rich, He's not going to mind. I'm going to go and offer sacrifice with this disgusting crop that I have. This crop that was dying already. And this goes to in another tangent where it talks about, where we look at sadaqah, for example. When you want to give something to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're doing it for His sake, and you're doing it for His pleasure, you'll see how different it is than when you're trying to give it to either show off, or you're giving it because you have to, or you're giving it because it's a trend, you're seeing other people doing it. You'll see the difference. Especially for like those that work and have wealth, you'll see how the difference of how you give. When you do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, And you look at the Sahaba, for example, radiallahu anhum, look at Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu, look at Uthman, radiallahu anhu, and how they would give sadaqah. Because they did this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were ready to sacrifice anything for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this was Habil, this was his mindset. He was like, I'm going to give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the best that I can. While Qabil, on the other hand, he wasn't the same. He just decided, okay, this is just a sacrifice to decide things. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to sacrifice something that doesn't really matter to me. So a fire came down from the sky in a way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided as it befits his manner. It came down and it devoured the sacrifice of Habil. This means that Habil was the one chosen and his sacrifice was chosen, leaving the sacrifice of Qabil untouched. So he became angry. So this is where the ayah says, وَاتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ ابْنَيْ آدَمَ إِذْ قَرَّبَا قُرْبَانًا فَتُقُبِّلَ مِنْ أَحَدِهِمَا وَلَمْ يُتَقَبَّلْ مِنَ الْآخَرِ. This is what part we're talking about here. Is it was accepted from Habil by that fire coming down, but it was not accepted from Qabil. وَلَمْ يُتَقَبَّلْ مِنْ الْآخَرِ. قَالَ لَأَقْتُلَنَّكَ. This is when he said, he got angry and he said, I'm going to kill you so that you don't marry my sister. So Habil here replied saying, Allah only accepts only from those who fear him. Meaning the reason Allah accepted from me and didn't accept from you is because clearly you don't have that fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in a different version from Abdullah ibn Amr, he narrates to us that by Allah saying, Wallahi, the victim, meaning Habil, was the stronger of the two. Even though he was the one that was killed, he was stronger of the two. And this could be stronger in either physical strength, it could be stronger in even in Iman. He was stronger at the end of the day. But because he was obedient, and he was very connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he restrained himself from actually going and fighting his brother and stretching his hands towards his brother so that he can kill him in return. But think about it. It would be self-defense at the end of the day. It would be self-defense. He's just protecting himself from someone trying to attack him, which is not wrong. But he was obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he had higher obedience. In fact, here Abdullah ibn Amr is telling us that he was stronger physically. He was stronger spiritually. He was stronger in both ways. So he could actually beat his brother. He could have stopped him, but he didn't. Because he said, إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. And then he said, لَإِن بَسَطْتَ إِلَيَّ يَدَكَ لِتَقْتُلَنِي مَا أَنَا بِبَاسِطٍ يَدِي إِلَيْكَ لِأَقْتُلَكَ. If you were to stretch your hand out to kill me, I'm not going to in return stretch my hand out to kill you. And Abu Ja'far tells us that Adam was watching his children. He was offering his children the sacrifices and the acceptance from Habil. But Qabil, he said to Adam, Habil's offering was accepted only because you prayed for him and you did not pray for me. So this was Qabil's ideology, was that the reason that Habil was accepted was because you already predetermined this. You wanted Habil to be the one that was accepted. You wanted Habil to win this. And then you went out and you made dua for him. So clearly he's blaming his father. Then he threatened his brother that he would settle this matter, i.e. he was going to kill his brother. He's going to make sure that he settles this. So one night, while Habil didn't return from tending to his flock, as he was a shepherd, Adam, he sent Qabil to see what happened to him. So when Qabil, he went looking for him, he found him, and there he complained, your offering was accepted, but mine was not. So to kind of summarize here, he went to go look for his brother because clearly his brother didn't come back from his job as a shepherd. He didn't return at the regular time that he returns. So Adam sent Qabil out to find his brother. And then he found him. And then he's still thinking about this issue and this disgusting thought that he's thinking about. So now it's just him and his brother. So this is the best time to do what he's thinking of doing. So he said, your offering was accepted, but mine was not. But Habil here replied, Allah accepts only from those who fear him. إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. So Qabil, he became angry. Once he heard this, he became angry. And think about it. He hears that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only accepts if you fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you're conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you're obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then because of that, Qabil even becomes more angry. Who's controlling him? This is all kind of going into place now. Who's triggering this fire and making the fire blaze more? Iblis. Yeah, Iblis. And the shaitan. Why? I'm gonna start it now, is what he's saying. He started with Adam alayhi salam and Hawa alayhi salam. He's gonna continue to their sons. And he's gonna continue and continue and continue. Now he's enticing Qabil. Once he hears that the fear of Allah is better, and once he hears about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's enticing him. And he's becoming more angry. So Qabil became angry once upon hearing this, and he hit his brother with the iron. The iron that he had in his hand, so an iron stick. He hit him, and obviously, like right now, if you grab an iron, and we said they were big back then, right? So if you grab an iron, and we know iron is very strong metal. If you grab iron and you hit someone in the head with it, there's a really good chance you're probably going to kill them. And they're probably going to die. So this is what he did. He went and he put his strength into it and he hit him in the head. Because we said that Habil was a stronger one. Right? So he hit him in the head and then he killed him. And the way that he died wasn't actually from the contact of the iron that hit him in the head. It hit him in the head, and obviously this really injured him, and then he fell and he hit a rock, and the rock opened his skull. And then there's another opinion from the scholars that he killed him with a rock while he was sleeping. So this actually is not with the opinion that he went to him and he actually talked to him and then this happened, right? We see that the other opinion, that he said it to him right away. Right when he was his sacrifice was accepted, he said, "In لأقتلنك إنما يتقبل الله من المتقين." So this opinion is saying that this conversation, it didn't happen once he went to go find his brother. Right? He saw his brother sleeping, he took a rock and he hit him in the head with it. The other opinion is saying that he went and he had this conversation with him. Right? He said, قال لأقتلنك قال إنما يتقبل الله من المتقين لئن بسطت إلي يدك لتقتلني ما أنا بباسط يدي إليك لأقتلك إني أخاف الله رب العالمين, and so on. Then he hit him with the iron. So the response that Habil showed after he was threatened by his brother is a sign of his noble character and that he was a pious person. Right? We know that from Habil. Because we see all these signs. He was someone who was really connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We see from the sacrifice that he provided. We see from the response that he's giving that he was someone who was connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and who was a very obedient servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He restrained himself from responding with the same threat that his brother made towards him. When he said, قال لأقتلنك, he could have said, no, you won't. You're not going to kill me. I'm going to go and protect myself and I'm going to kill you. I'm stronger. He could have done all that, but he didn't. He said, لئن بسطت إلي يدك لتقتلني ما أنا بباسط يدي إليك لأقتلك إني أخاف الله رب العالمين. This is why the Prophet ﷺ, he says in a hadith, when two Muslims or two believers confront one another, right? They're fighting, whether it's with swords, now we have guns obviously, or even your fists if you're fighting each other, then the murderer and the murdered are both in hell. Before we continue the hadith, I want to come back to that part. So the Prophet ﷺ, he's saying, if you fight your Muslim brother, your believing brother, or you fight your Muslim sister, or your believing sister, if you fight each other, and one gets killed, so this is you guys fighting, like duking it out, you're fighting each other, right? This is not like Habil and Qabil's scenario or the story that we're hearing here. This is, the guy probably said he's going to fight you, or he's just going to kill you, or whatever it was, and you said, okay, let's go. Let's see who could do it first. Let's see who's stronger. I'll put you to the ground. 6 feet under. All these things that we hear, we know about it. So you say, let's go. And you start fighting each other. The one that's killed is going to hellfire. And the one that killed is also going to hellfire. Why? Because they raised each other's hand to kill each other. That was their intention. So the one that died, this was qadr for him to die, but he already had the intention to kill his fellow brother in Islam. So the companions, they asked him, because they're wondering, does it make sense? Ya Rasulullah, this is of the murder, but what about the victim, the one that was murdered? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, the reason that he's going to hellfire is because he was also keen, and he already had the intention. And he was, meaning keen means that he was ready. He was ready to go. He was ready to kill his brother. He had that in his heart, that I'm going to take this guy out. So, because of that, he is also going to hellfire. And this is a sahih hadith, as muttafaqun alayh, between Bukhari and Muslim. But if you do what the verse says, let's say someone you know very well wants to fight you. We're not going to go to something extreme as killing you. Someone wants to fight you. And you try to calm them down, you try to de-escalate the situation. Obviously there are times where you're permitted to protect yourself. Right? You know, we're not just saying just stand like a statue and like get yourself beaten. But there's ways you can de-escalate. The way that Habil did. What did he say? قال إنما يتقبل الله من المتقين. And he's indirectly telling his brother, go and become conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you do this, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept from you. Right? He's also warning him. Right? What did he say? لئن بسطت إلي يدك لتقتلني ما أنا بباسط يدي إليك لأقتلك إني أخاف الله رب العالمين إني أريد أن تبوء بإثمي وإثمك فتكون من أصحاب النار وذلك جزاء الظالمين. So he's warning him as well. He's telling him that if you go ahead and do this, then you should be ready to go to hellfire and take my sins with you as well. Which is determined, 100%. Right? If you go and you kill a believing Muslim brother or sister, or in general if you kill someone, but it's worse if you kill a believing individual. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يَقْتُلْ مُؤْمِنًا مُتَعَمِّدًا فَجَزَاؤُهُ جَهَنَّمُ خَالِدًا فِيهَا وَغَضِبَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَلَعَنَهُ وَأَعَدَّ لَهُ عَذَابًا أَلِيمًا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that anyone that yaqtul, kills, right? And yaqtul is also someone that's constantly doing it. If you look at the tense that the word is used, قتل as the ayah before, وَمَنْ قَتَلَ مُؤْمِنًا خَطَأً, right? But here saying وَمَنْ يَقْتُلْ, so someone that's constantly killing, or someone that kills a believing individual, and you don't turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you die in that state, فَجَزَاؤُهُ جَهَنَّمُ خَالِدًا فِيهَا. Know that your abode is the hellfire internally, same as the kafir, the munafiq, and the mushrik. Same. You're never going to come out of it. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us. وَغَضِبَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is angry with you until the day you die, if you don't turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَعَنَهُ اللَّهُ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has cursed you in this life and the hereafter. Again, if you don't repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا. But the reason that you're seeing that I'm going back to this is because there are people, whether it's even in this city, in this country, in other countries outside the world, or all around the world, who kill their believing Muslim brothers and sisters. This is something that's happening today, right now. So this person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, if you don't turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will be in Jahannam the same way the mushrik and the kafir and the munafiq is in there. Internally, never to come out. Oh, but he had a little bit of iman. Oh, he had all... No. You have to get the rights back to this person that you killed. But if you're just constantly going on a killing spree, killing whoever you want, and you die in that state, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you. But you have to see that this response that Habil gave is a response that you should be given in any altercation. Right? To tell the person and warn them of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also tell them of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That Allah can forgive them of the wrong that they did. You can tell them to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Habil did. And Ibn Kathir tells us that it doesn't mean that the sins of the murderer, or the person that's murdered, like the victim, automatically is into account of the murder. Why is he saying this? Because Habil, he says that he wishes that his sins transfer over to the Qabil, and that he gets double the sins. So Ibn Kathir here, he's telling us, rahimahullah ta'ala, rahmatan wasi'ah, he's telling us that it doesn't mean that if someone is a murder victim or is murdered, that their sins are automatically going to transfer to the one that's causing the murder. He also says that it could happen with some people on the Day of Judgment, Yawm al-Qiyamah, that when the good deeds of the murderer could not recompense for the crime of the murder that he had committed, then the murder victim may demand that his sins should be transferred to the murderer. And this will happen in all cases of crime and injustice. And we see this, right? If you're backbiting someone, if you're slandering someone, if you do all these things of injustice, we see that the sins transfer onto you, right, of the other person. And this, he says, has been confirmed in authentic hadith, as we know, right? We see from a hadith from Sa'd bin Waqqas that he says the Prophet ﷺ said that there will be a turmoil or a fitna. The one who sat down from it will be better than the one who's standing, and the one who's standing will be better than the one who is walking, and the one who's walking will be better than the one who is running. He said, tell me, what shall I do if someone enters my home and wants to kill me? So he asked Prophet ﷺ, what should I do if someone comes into my home and tries to actually kill me? He replied, be like the son of Adam alayhi salam. And this is Musnad Imam Ahmed and in At-Tirmidhi. So it is a Sahih hadith. And many other books of hadith reference this hadith as well. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling Sa'd bin Waqqas that, yes, the person came to your house to kill you, be like him. How? Who knows? What does he mean by be like Habil? What did Habil do? Yeah, the one is that, you can say one thing, be patient. Yeah, what else? Moment. He warned him. He warned him of the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What else? Eh? No opinions? He advised him. So all these things, de-escalation, right? He tried to de-escalate the situation. So Prophet ﷺ is telling you, if this case does happen to you, right? Try to use the tips and the actions that Habil did, for that's better for you. In hadith reported by Imam Ahmed, narrated from Abdullah ibn Masud, who said that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that there is no soul on earth that is killed unjustly except that Qabil bears a part of that sin, because he was the first to initiate this tradition, this sin. So that means that every single person that causes murder or commits murder unjustly is what? Is literally giving their sins. And this is, we're talking about what? Millions of years of murder and corruption on the earth. All of it going back to who? A part of it going back to who? To Habil. Huh? To Habil? Is it Habil or Qabil? To Qabil. It's going back to Qabil. And Mujahid, he tells us that basically the chastisement of Cain or Qabil was brought forward the day that he killed his brother. So this disgusting act caused him to become like the person he was after this specific incident, and the person that he became. And his shanks were joined against his thighs. His face was turned towards the sun wherever he went, as a punishment for the sin that he committed. And you have to understand that this sin that he committed, right? You have to understand that this sin was not just a random guy, a random Joe that was walking around. It was against his own brother, the blood. Same blood. His blood brother. Family. Same mother and father. Is who he killed. This is why that we're seeing this, that his face was turned towards the sun wherever he went. And that he was chastised like this. Because of this sin that he committed against his fellow brother, his blood brother. The Prophet ﷺ also said in another hadith by At-Tirmidhi, reported by At-Tirmidhi, that there is no sin more deserving that Allah hastens the punishment in this world for the one who has committed it, along with what is stored up for him in the hereafter, in the Yawm al-Qiyamah, than the sin of rebellion and cutting off the ties of blood relations. So the Prophet ﷺ basically saying that there is nothing worse in this world. There's nothing worse in this world, and there's nothing better for Allah to hasten His punishment upon than two things: the sin of rebellion and the sin of cutting off the blood relations and the family ties. This is very serious hadith, because it's saying that if you cut off your family, let's say you have a brother or you have a cousin and they did something against you, and you don't talk to them for, and this happens around the world many times. You don't talk to them for 20 years. Last time I talked to Yasin was 50 years ago. Last time I talked to Khalid was 30 years ago. Last time I talked to Selma was 18 years ago. Never to come back and connect the ties. The Prophet ﷺ is saying that there is nothing more deserving than Allah to punish you, to hasten the punishment upon you, to speed up the punishment upon you. There's nothing worse or better than that. Ibn Kathir rahimahullah also says that according to what he has written in the books, which is in the hands of the people of the book, meaning the Torah, and the previous books, because the previous books, as we mentioned in the first class, they refer to these stories, right? Although they might be incorrect, there are parts of it that are correct that the Salaf and the scholars would turn back to and kind of also compare, right? So he says that according to what I've read in the book of the people of the book, meaning the Christians and the Jews, especially the one that they claim to be the Torah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala postponed His punishment and granted him a respite. He lived in land called Nawad in the east of Ad, which is now called Qinin. He had a son whose name was in the book of the book of the Bible, it says Enoch, right? And then he had a son called Irid. Irid had a son called Mahujil. So all these names and things, Ibn Kathir, he found it in the book of the people of the book. So this is the Torah, the Injil, so the Bible, Gospel, in his research on these stories. So it also mentions that Adam alayhi salam, so we said that Hawa, she gave birth 20 times, each twins, right? One of the really unique other sons, so we mentioned Habil and Qabil, their story. Another very unique one is Sheath. Why is Sheath unique? Who knows why Sheath is unique? Exactly. So Sheath was chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after Adam alayhi salam. He was chosen to be the next prophet to send out La ilaha illallah to the world. Why? And to his people. Because Qabil, his tribe and his side of the family, they became kind of what we could call the darker side of the family, where they were turning against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the shaitan was Even like music. For example, some scholars say that the music, it came from them, right? Through shaitan, showing them, this, listen to this sound, or listen to this sound, or listen to this sound. And then they built it from that. So shaitan, he affected that side of the family very severely, to the point where they turned against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sheath was sent to bring back La ilaha illallah to this family of Adam alayhi salam. And it is said by the scholars and the research that Sheath alayhi salam, when he was born, Adam at the time was 130 years old. Was 130 years old. And he lived 800 years after that. And we see that the times before us, way back in time, they lived a lot longer than we do nowadays. They lived a lot longer. We mentioned this in the first day of this class. We said that, for example, Nuh alayhi salam was 950 years. We see here in Adam that Sheath, when he was born, he was 130 years old. And then he died 800 years after that. So what's the math there, woman? Huh? 930. You agree? Kind of? Huh? Yeah. No, the math. You agree with the math? The math is, he said that 130 plus 800 is what? 930. Yeah. Me, I say it's 230. That's what I think. But all jokes aside, Adam was 930 when he passed away. Alayhi salam. Alayhi salatu wasalam. And then he lived 807 years afterwards, meaning Sheath. So we're going to stop here before we get into Sheath, because Sheath is its own story. But we're going to kind of go back into Habil and Qabil. So we see that Habil and Qabil, they were the first few offsprings and children of Adam and Hawa alayhim salam. And we said that Habil and Qabil, Habil was the one that was more obedient. He was also, he said, physically he was the one that was stronger. Right? He was physically stronger and he was more built. And Qabil was less obedient and he wasn't as strong, but he was very dark in nature. Right? He was dark in nature, meaning that he had bad thoughts, and the shaitan, it was easy for him to do waswasa on him. And he ended up killing his brother because of this. Right? We said that they wanted to marry, or Adam alayhi salam, he would marry, there was two sets of twins, he would marry them off to each other. Because of this, Habil's twin sister was supposed to marry who? Qabil. Qabil's twin sister was supposed to marry Habil. However, to Qabil, that twin sister was a lot less beautiful. She was uglier. Right? She wasn't to his appeal. So he decided that I'm not going to marry her. And he actually protested against his father. I'm not marrying her. I'm marrying this twin because I like her better, she looks better, whatever it is. Right? So, because of that, what happened was, Adam alayhi salam, he told them to make a sacrifice. That they sacrifice something to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then Adam, he left for a time. So they went out to do the sacrifice, and Habil, being a shepherd, as we mentioned, he decided to take a fat lamb that he had and to sacrifice this to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala jalla jalaluhu. However, Qabil, he decided to take a crop that was kind of dead and ugly and to sacrifice this to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see, we said the difference in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can see just from that. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought a fire down in a way that befits his manner, and he chose Habil's sacrifice. Because of this, Qabil, he got mad. He said, I'm going to kill you. Habil told him, if you kill me, then obviously I want my sins to go to you. So you get double the sins, and then you end up in hellfire, never to leave it again. Never to leave it internally. And then, obviously, it didn't help him, didn't change him, nothing changed. He killed his brother. So that is the story of Habil and Qabil, as it's mentioned in the Quran and the Hadith. Is there any questions in general to anything? Do we know who Qabil ended up marrying? I'm not sure of Allah Alam on that one. So yeah, Qabil wanted to marry his own twin, which he found to be more appealing to him. When they were trying to get married, Allah Alam. Doesn't say in the book how old they were. But Habil he was supposed to marry Qabil's twin, but like we said, this is the time, it's a difference of time. This is not the time where there's billions of humans. It's just a few of the creation and offspring of Adam and Hawa. In order to reproduce, this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to do it, and this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspired to Adam alayhi salam, and then he did it that way. Is there any other questions? Question? You can ask, we have the time for question. We have a little time. Last question. I think what time is Isha? Is it 10:50 something? 6, yeah, we have time. We have 10 minutes. So yes, the Prophet ﷺ, he says in a hadith, salawatullah wasalam alayhi, that if two brothers in Islam fight each other and one of them gets killed, the one that's killed and murdered is going to go to Jahannam. It's going to go to hell. Then the one that also killed is going to go to hellfire. And then they asked the Prophet ﷺ, it makes sense for the murdered to go to hellfire. That's logical. But why is the one that was victimized and murdered going to hellfire as well? He said because he was keen and eager to kill his brother. So if the roles were reversed, or if he ended up winning, he would have killed his brother because he already had that intention. Obviously, inna Allah yaghfiru dhunub jami'a. If the murderer repents, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to forgive him. Right? But the Prophet is just giving us an analogy of, and making us understand that there is no reason for you at all to premeditate or to think that I'm going to go kill this person or I'm going to kill this individual. Right? If you're fighting someone, first of all, you shouldn't be fighting. As we said, it's better for you to de-escalate. Right? In the hadith, Prophet he told him, if someone comes into my house and they try to kill me, this person is fully wrong from you. We're not talking about, the game of basketball where usually people fight each other, or a game of soccer. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about someone actually came into your house. Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas says, we asked Prophet, he said, someone came to my house and they want to kill me. What should I do? And what does he tell him? He says, you tell him, you do exactly what Habil did. You don't do what Qabil did, or you don't go and start fighting and killing the person. Even though they're wrong from you, completely wrong from you. We're not talking about, again, like a basketball game. It's meditated, the fight, right? It's not like a jinn came into you and you start fighting. This is premeditated, right? Whatever happens, you start fighting your Muslim brother, you start fighting your Muslim sister, you start duking it out, and you kill them by accident. We don't ask this to happen to anyone, and we hope that this doesn't happen to anyone, but we're just saying, right? We're just saying that there should be no reason for you to fight or to pick your hands up to hurt your Muslim brother or your Muslim sister. No reason at all. And the Prophet ﷺ, we mentioned many hadith, he made it clear. There should be no reason. And the hadith we see, they're very harsh and they're very strict in punishment. We mentioned the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يَقْتُلْ مُؤْمِنًا مُتَعَمِّدًا فَجَزَاؤُهُ جَهَنَّمْ خَالِدًا فِيهَا خَالِدًا فِيهَا. There's no reason for you to go and pick up your hands to hurt someone else, or even worse, billah, to kill someone else, like Qabil did. And actually, there's another hadith or another ayah. We're gonna finish with this ayah. After Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the story of Habil and Qabil in Surah Ma'idah, what does He say? من أجل ذلك كتبنا على بني إسرائيل أنه من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا. Because of this that we saw, this story that we just explained, because of this, كتبنا على بني إسرائيل, we ordained it upon the children of Israel and upon us as well. Upon us as well. that whoever kills someone, أو فساد في الأرض, right, or corrupts around the land, whether he's killing for corruption, whether he's killing because out of anger, whatever it is, you kill someone, فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا. You're going to be punished as if you killed everyone else on earth. If you don't repent, obviously. If you repent, we're going to keep reading this. If you repent, إن الله يغفر الذنوب جميعا. إلا من Allah, when he talks about killing and zina and Surah Al-Furqan and all this, what does he say? إلا من تاب وآمن وعمل عملا صالحا فإنه يتوب إلى الله متابا. So if you turn back to Allah in any sin that you do, except shirk obviously, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to forgive you. But that doesn't mean premeditated. I'm going to do it, then I'm going to ask for forgiveness. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وعملا متقبلا. اللهم تقبل منا واغفر لنا ما تقدم من ذنوبنا ما تأخر. اللهم إنك عفو كريم حليم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الغافرين. اللهم انصر إخواننا المستضعفين في فلسطين وفي غزة وفي كل مكان يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصرهم بنصرتك يا رب العالمين فإنك أنت القوي العزيز. واغفر لهم وارحمهم يا رب العالمين وساعدهم يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم يا رب، اللهم عليك بالظالمين الذين يضلونهم. اللهم عليك بهم فإنهم لا يعجزونك. اللهم عليك بهم فإنهم لا يعجزونك. إنك أنت القوي العزيز. قول ما تستمعون فاستغفر الله يغفر لكم يا فوز المستغفرين.